Well, hello everyone. It's very nice to be with you here today. My name's Andrea Champlin. I am the statewide systems advocate and an advocacy specialist at the Finger Lakes Independence Center here in Ithaca. I am here to tell you all a little bit about FLIC, talking about our Try It room, our loan closet, and some of our other services, including the systems advocacy that I specifically do a lot on. I will talk a little bit about what systems advocacy is, why it might be something that you're interested in, kind of where our goals are very overlapping. Love living at home in Finger Lakes Independence Center, and talk about some potential opportunities for volunteering or just ways to stay informed if it's something that you're interested in. And at the end, we'll of course have time for questions and anything else. All right, so the Finger Lakes Independence Center it's an independent living center. So independent living centers were created out of the anti-institutionalization movement during the civil rights movement. And they were designed to be organizations that are led by people with disabilities for people with disabilities to help them live independently in the communities of their choices. So we do a lot of cross disability work. There's very little eligibility requirements to receive our services. Many other organizations are very specific with diagnoses or what benefits you're receiving, things like that. So independent living centers really try to kind of cut through some of that, the bureaucracy and red tape of eligibility stuff. So we are hoping to empower everyone with disabilities and also creating a more inclusive and accessible society. Some of our core services, and these are services that you will find at every independent living center across the country, are information and referral, individual and systems advocacy, peer support, independent living skills training, and transition services for folks that are either transitioning out of high school into college or other post-secondary education, or folks that are looking to transition out of a nursing home or similar institution. FLIC also is the fiscal intermediary, which basically means that we do the administrative back end stuff that goes along with some personal care aid programs. So we have the registry, which is a private pay option. The consumer directed personal assistance program, which enables consumers to select and hire and train and fire their own care aides for folks that receive Medicaid. And then we also work with the expanded in-home services for the elderly program with the Tompkins County Long-Term Care Unit. That's for folks that do not have a Medicaid program and are over 60 years old. And then we also have my coworker Teresa oversees our New York Connects program. New York Connects is a whole big statewide program, and it basically is a very quick, efficient kind of phone directory. They also have an internet database that helps people connect with long-term care services that they might need. And that could range from everything from medical things to non-medical things, housing, anything in that spectrum. All right, so we'll start off with a loan closet. So this is probably what FLIC is best known for. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. We try to make this as easy and straightforward for folks as possible, so no one needs an appointment. Anyone can stop on in anytime we're open and pick out a piece of medical equipment that they can use. We have a small deposit for some of our larger items that people receive back as soon as they return the equipment. Anyone from anywhere can borrow our equipment. They do have to come to FLIC to pick it up. But sometimes we'll have people ask questions about, oh, someone doesn't live in Tompkins County, but they're here right now. Can they still borrow stuff? And the answer is absolutely yes. We just want the equipment to be used by folks that need it. We have a 3-month loan period for our items. We're usually able to give out extensions. We have more supply of certain pieces of medical equipment than others, of course, so that can impact it. And then we also have a small ramp program where we can also loan out temporary ramps that people could use for their houses. We're putting one on a stage for an event coming up, which I'm excited about. So all kinds of things like that, just to help people out. We also have what we call the try-it room. So this is kind of similar to our loan closet, but less durable medical equipment and more like little assistive devices. I like to think of the try-it room, it's kind of the junk drawer of assistive equipment because you can find anything in there. Um, We've got all kinds of stuff that has been donated to different different community members, everything from some of the under the desk pedal things that you can see in the photo, all the way to silverware that can help folks if they have some kind of dexterity difficulty, and it can help them use silverware more easily. So similar to our loan closet, no one needs an appointment. These devices are only available for a month. And the idea here is that folks are just kind of trying it out to see if it'll work for them. And there's no deposit on it because they're very small items. Yeah, that's what the try it room is. So this room can be great if you're struggling with something, but you don't quite know what you need. You don't quite know what'll be helpful yet, but you think that there could be something out there that can help you. Sometimes we'll have folks that call FLIC and will be like, I'm having trouble with reaching this specific thing in my house. Do you have any ideas? And folks will come in and we can go through the tryout room with them and kind of figure out some options and ideas. Then they can take it home, try it for a month, and then if it works for them, then we can help them try and find where they can get their own. Or if it doesn't, then we can look at what other things we have in the tryout room. Our admin coordinator, Lindsay, does a lot with the loan closet and tryout room. She's also developed a relationship with Cornell University, has this awesome group of engineers that have a very cool 3D printer and have been really passionate about making different accessibility devices and tools. So there's also times where someone might have a specific need. We don't have quite the perfect thing, but we might be able to get in contact with the Cornell engineers and they might be able to create something for somebody. They did that for one of the consumers that we work with. I forget what the actual device was. I wish I could remember. But they can just custom print something for people. It's pretty cool. So why would folks borrow the equipment? Sometimes we have people that ask that. Sometimes people just need a piece of equipment for short-term use. They might be recovering from a surgery or have gotten injured, or maybe they are having an illness of some kind. And they might not want to buy one unnecessarily for when they'll just need it for a short while, or perhaps their insurance doesn't cover it. It could be for any number of reasons. We'll also have folks that will borrow equipment while they're waiting for insurance processes. So sometimes there's a lag between getting your, the doctor saying, hey, this is what I would recommend, and then getting your prescription filled, approved by the insurance, all of that. So FLIC can be helpful to kind of bridge that gap for folks. That could also happen, like if someone's wheelchair is out for repair and they need an extra just to use for a short while. A lot of times folks will also use the loan closet or the try-it room to just see if different pieces of equipment will work for them. So maybe someone's recommended that you need a cane, but there's a bunch of different kinds of canes and you don't know which one's gonna work the best for you. So you can, again, come into FLIC, try it out, see what works best, and then go from there. Out-of-town guests will often utilize the loan closet. Right now with all the college graduations we have going on, there are a lot of folks that have borrowed wheelchairs from us. Things like that are fine, special events. But those are all some reasons that folks might use our loan closet. We also included an image that we have on our loan closet door. It says you should never feel ashamed of using something that helps keep you safe. A lot of our staff are also very well versed and very aware that it can be really hard to begin using a piece of assistive equipment or an accessibility device. So we are also all pretty skilled in navigating those conversations. I know some folks will come in, especially if they have an older parent that they're concerned about, but doesn't feel quite ready to use a walker, for example. So we can also kind of talk through like what conversations could be had so that that person can really be maintaining their highest level of independence that they're looking for. And then we also are part of the statewide systems advocacy network. So this is specifically what I do. So this was developed to support the independent living movement. And it does this by creating different partnerships in the hopes of educating the community and the larger society to create social change and just a more accessible, inclusive, and equitable society. So I'm going to share a short video. I'm going to share a short video. So captions. And please let me know if you cannot hear it. This is taking a look at ageism and ableism because they can get conflated to being the same thing, but I think of them as more of like an overlapping like Venn diagram. And I just liked how this video broke it down. So I'll go ahead and share that with you all.
Andrea, are you able to turn up the volume on your screen?
Ooh, yes, I am.
Okay. We can see the captions, but we can't hear it.
Oh, that's kind of hilarious because it is blasting. I was about to ask if you wanted me to lower it a little bit because it's very loud on my end. Huh, let me see. Let's see, I can also pull it up on. Let me. Are you hearing that?
It's not going.
Interesting. Well, I'll give it another. Might need to stop my share and then reshare. Sorry, folks. All right, can folks see that? Yeah, is the video showing?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's see about if you can hear it. Was sound coming through? Still no. Oh, what a pain. All righty. No problem. Well, I will talk you through it, which probably won't be quite as engaging, but we'll do the trick. So what the video talks about is how with one element of ageism is the implied idea that folks of an older age are less able to do things in whatever way that is. So that's the overlap that it's looking at. And it's that relationship between the two and how they kind of feed into each other. And of course, like it goes without saying, like everyone with a disability, people are all different ages, and everyone that is of a certain age does not automatically have a disability, but there is quite a bit of overlap. And both of the isms can feed into each other. So if we are working to address ageism, it can be helpful to also be addressing ableism. And when we're working to address ableism, it's also important to incorporate aspects of working against ageism because they go together and they can support each other. So when we're working against them, we want to address all of it. So again, I apologize. That was not as eloquent as what the video put it as, but that is my synopsis. Okay, and then are you back to seeing the PowerPoint presentation? No, okay.
No, we just see
Around.
the YouTube, but I think I found the link to the YouTube video, so I'll send it out to participants after the recording today.
Oh, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. All right, let me get us back. That showing up all right? Excellent. All righty. Move around. Oh. So as we just talked about a little bit, and you guys can check out the video later on, ableism and ageism can go hand in hand. About almost half of folks that are age 75 or older have a disability, and about a quarter of those 65 to 74 report having a disability. That is about even with the general population. For adults that report having a disability, it's about 1 in 4 also. One of the things how I had really learned about Love Living at Home and how Thea and I had initially gotten connected was I attended one of the like intro community meetings that you all have. And I was struck by the real goal of living independently, like on your own terms, like what you like, where do you want to live? Where do you want your community to be? And what things do you want in that community? Because I saw that as a really mutual goal that both FLIC and Love Living at Home has. And the other reasons that, you know, just to foster collaboration around these issues is that anybody can become disabled at any time in your life. It's one of the only elements of identity that people can easily move in, well, not easily, but move in and out of. So it's an element of identity, just like race, class, gender, sexual orientation, any of those other things that we think about. Disability status is also an aspect of that. All right, so how do we go about systems advocacy? Like, what is it? It can be a little abstract and in the clouds, but when we really break it down, a lot of systems advocacy looks like this: writing letters, sending emails, talking with others is really one of the biggest things, and why I like it so much. It's really about making connections. All of these things, whether it's making phone calls, meeting with your representatives, attending events, it's really about connecting and sharing information with each other. So that we can reach a better understanding and then hopefully have some of that social change that we're looking for. And of course, voting is always a very important part of this also. And we'll go into that a little bit more because there's some stuff that I do in my systems advocacy work to make sure that folks' voting rights are being respected and it's as accessible as possible. Okay, so we'll talk just a little bit about the New York State legislative process. We aren't going to go through all of the nooks and crannies because there's a lot to it, but essentially you'll have a bill drafted by either the Senate or the Assembly, and then they will talk about it amongst themselves in their committees. So there's like the Health Committee, other like workforce committees, all kinds of different ones. I do the most with the Health Committee. And then they'll take it out onto the floor. So that's where the full Assembly or the full Senate would be, and they'll talk about it. And then they'll pass it along to the other section. So if the Assembly introduced the bill, that'll be the first chamber, and then it goes to the second chamber. That would be the Senate. So that both groups are getting a chance with the bill. And the bills can circle back and through that a bunch before they finally potentially move on to the governor. And then the governor can either veto it or they can send it back.
They can sign it.
Yep, or they can sign it into law. Yep. Yep. So when they send it back, that would go out for more like further discussion, all of that. And then once if it has been signed on by the governor, then it would become law, and then it would move on to the rulemaking process. So before I get into that, so at this section, I like this graphic just because it shows kind of some of the different opportunities of where we can use these actions and systems advocacy to create change. So, you know, in the very first, like with the idea part of this, a lot of the time when we're meeting with representatives, we might be giving them ideas for different bills that they could draft to address different issues that their constituents are seeing, right? That is their job. That is why they should be meeting with constituents and prioritizing that. And why it's important that constituents give them that information and engage in those conversations. They can also have an impact on how the bill is drafted. You know, so beyond even just that kind of initial conceptualization of what could be helpful, they can also put in their input for things that should be included or things to be avoided. And then while the bill is being discussed, constituents can also have a large say in that. You know, you can track a bill online to see like where exactly in this process it is, and that can help to let you know where you should be calling. So if the health committee is talking about a bill, then you could call the folks on the health committee, give them your 2 cents, and then they could take that into consideration. You can also, so all of those all have opportunities like that. You can also call the governor directly, and also either encourage them to veto or send something back or sign it into law. So all throughout the process, there's opportunities for constituents to have their input be heard and incorporated into whatever laws are being made. Then it goes into a rulemaking process. So once something has become a law, the different state agencies, so these are like the different like New York State Department of Health, Department or Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, you know, all of those different state agencies. They are the ones that create the rules about how the law is actually going to be implemented. Like, what is that going to look like in the day-to-day policy and procedure of how this is playing out in the state? And they, of course, have to adhere to laws that are already existing. So the different rules will be listed on a weekly register, and then that will start a public comment period or give opportunities for public hearings. So this is another opportunity for systems advocacy to occur. So something I have to do as part of my deliverables for the statewide systems advocacy program is I have to provide so many public comments or public testimonies per year. So people need to have at least 60 days to submit these rules. Usually there's a variety of options. So you could just post a public comment. You could send an email to a direct person. You could go and speak at a public hearing or through a virtual hearing, things like that. Once the public has weighed in, the agency will then review the comments and they can either implement the changes exactly as they were suggested. They could kind of go back and compromise a little bit with what they had, or they can just say, nope, we can't do any of these changes. Regardless of what happens, then there's going to have to be a notice of adoption. So once, whether they've put things back into the rulemaking process, there's going to have to be a notice of adoption before that rule is actually made official. And that's kind of where the opportunity ends a little bit to have input in this particular stage. And then sometimes if there is a lot of changes being made to a rule as it was initially presented, they might do like a resubmission, and then the public would have, I think it's 45 days to respond. It's slightly less, but still more than 30. All right. So now we'll just take a minute to kind of go through what issues have been kind of prioritized for this upcoming legislative year. So one of the big ones is continuing to work to have adequate funding for independent living centers. Because of how the state budget is broken down, independent living centers are actually under the education budget, which means that we are ineligible for some things that other human services groups get. We are also looking to repeal some of the cuts to Medicaid funded home care services. So the Medicaid redesign team 2 essentially eliminated an entire level of home care, and we are looking to reinstate that so that people can continue to be eligible for the care that they need so that they can stay living at home. And we're also looking for the state to make public a wider range of data just so that taxpayers, everybody can just have a better sense of where their money is going, how it's being used, used, and yeah, just have some additional accountability there. Data can be I don't think data is most people's favorite thing. It can be really tricky to navigate and get a sense of, but I think it's also a really important tool for accountability and equity. So that's what we're looking for. Sub-minimum wage is still a legal thing to do in New York State. If your place of employment has a 14C certificate from the Department of Labor, we are looking to end that. I think everyone should be paid at least a minimum wage if they're working. We also don't think it's fair that the state has sovereign immunity to claims under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You'll see that our own assembly person, Anna Kellis, is one of the sponsors on that bill. Currently, the only way to hold an entity accountable for violations to the ADA is to initiate a lawsuit.
Oh my gosh.
That's the only, yep, that's the only thing you can do. So there's a lot of efforts to try to change that. And we're also saying that we don't think the state should be immune from all of that, because it's hard to have accountability if you're immune to accountability. Yeah. We also want, New York State has often said it's an employment first state, which means that it's trying to get folks with disabilities into employment first. Getting them connected with jobs and other things. Even with that though, our rates we can say that we're employment first, but when you look at the numbers, they don't quite tell the same story. So we would like the state to also really invest in increasing employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And the 7% hiring goal is not huge in my opinion. I think that's a pretty modest, reasonable goal. The Access to Home program, this is a program that my office and I are very passionate about because we get people connected to it a lot, and we just have seen what a big difference it can make. So if you are someone that you're either renting or you own your home, and there's some kind of an accessibility modification that would make a huge difference, like a stair lift or a ramp or something like that. Those accommodation things can be really expensive. So Access to Home provides funding to help people be able to afford that. And unfortunately, it's woefully underfunded. And what we've currently seen is that often a lot of the money that it does receive tends to kind of not get much past New York City. So that is also part of why they are looking to increase the administration rate, so that there can be some additional oversight and just making sure that that money is really getting across the state more equitably. We are also looking to create some minimum standards for if you're receiving state or federal funding, the building should be accessible. Because that's the law. Because I know some of these feel very, very clear and common sense. And yet we're still fighting for it all the time, right? And then finally, elections. So again, this is one that even when I was looking, I was like, oh my gosh, is that really the priority? Like that's it. We'd like everyone to have to be trained really regularly. Something we're doing, everyone's thinking a lot about elections right now, I think. Something we hear of a lot is that sometimes poll staff might not have a lot of practice needing the specific, of how to use the accessible ballot marking device, or, it's just not something that they're doing every single day. So they might get out of practice with it and not totally know how to do it. Especially when we're thinking about some of those smaller polling places. Like I go to Caroline, for my voting, and that's a super small polling site. A recent one that we were successful with around elections was moving elections the same year, so that people wouldn't have to go out for one election and then a few weeks later go back out and do the other one, because that can be tricky, especially for folks with disabilities or any kind of mobility difficulties, transportation barriers. It just creates a lot of unnecessary barriers. So yes, that's what we're working on for this year. And then there's also a lot of other stuff. Like these are kind of the main ones that the New York Association of Independent Living has laid out. But that is not the extent of the statewide advocacy that I do and I share with my volunteers about. So that brings us talking about my volunteer advocacy team. So this is a team I am still working to build. So the hope is that the volunteer advocacy team will participate in any of those actions that we had looked at a little bit ago, to try to influence policy at all of those different stages in the legislative process and the rulemaking process. So part of that would be getting different action alerts. You might have seen them for other causes. They're pretty popularly used. But when something like if something is about to be voted on, say, then I might send out an alert to all of my volunteers and say, hey, they're voting on this. Here's some information on it. Here is the way you can look up your representative's phone number. And here is a call script you can use if that makes it easier for you. And then I'm also available to answer, questions, or if people have concerns or don't totally understand some element of the bill, because the language can be really confusing sometimes. And sometimes you have to read it a bunch. So I'm available to support and help folks to act on those. And also participating in legislative meetings. So I meet with our representatives pretty regularly, definitely at least a couple times a year. And part of what is really nice about those is bringing others with me. Like I can talk about some of these issues all day, but it's important that the representatives are hearing from a wide range of people, not just people that are like professional. Even though I am someone with a disability and I work at an independent living center, it's still good to have just the community be part of those. Some fundraising stuff I think we might get into this year. My hope and dream is to bring a volunteer advocacy group with me to Albany, and cover the transportation costs and things like that. So some fundraising could be part of it. Coming up with different events. So that could be like I'm working on helping plan for the Democracy Festival that'll happen in August. So it could be that kind of an event coordination, or it could be smaller things like helping to plan for legislative meetings, things like that. Also providing testimony. So if you or someone you know has had either a really good or a really bad experience that you think people should know about, that should be considered when policy is being made, I would love to help uplift that and make sure that the people that need to hear it hear it. And then also recruiting other volunteers. I think that can be really important too. I don't think it can be said enough, like how powerful connections can be. So through things like this, or just talking to your own networks, anything like that at all. One thing I really like about social change work and systems advocacy is that genuinely everybody has something to offer. Whatever your like secret skill, secret superpower is, I'm certain it could be utilized if you're interested and want to contribute and be part of it. All right, and that's finish up. That is my last trip to Albany, where we were storming and taking over the war room. I'm with a staff, Sue Stahl from, where is she from? She's from the Center for Disability Rights in Rochester. We're outside the door to the governor's office. There's my contact information, and that is all I have for you all. Anyone have any questions or anything at all? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking language and kind of just breaking it down, because I think for me personally, I think I'm just kind of overwhelmed at the overall thought of getting more involved. So I really appreciate the way that you kind of approached it. I'm curious, with the volunteer advocacy team, you mentioned a few different ways that people can help. Could someone join that is just interested in like one or two of those items, and kind of help where they can?
Absolutely, yeah. So even, when I do those action alerts quite often, literally, because I do the actions too, because that helps too. They usually literally take less than 5 minutes. A lot of times they're, you could take longer on it, but it could be a 5-minute action. And then, so you could do that 5-minute action, and which could be clicking your mouse like 3 times, literally. Sometimes that's all it. I usually try to bring that into the action alert. Like, I promise it'll be 5 mouse clicks and it'll be done. And also sending it out to your friends, right? Anytime representative's office is emailed, called, someone stops by, they have to tally that. So it might seem silly, like, oh, is saying this script for the 100th time? Is that really? It will, because it's another tally to be added. I also often tell people that because sometimes, me included, when I first started doing action alerts like this, I would get very tongue-tied and very nervous. They're just trying to figure out where they put the tally mark, and then they move on to the next call. So yeah, so any component of this that feels of interest, please let me know. I would love if we all did like 5 minutes, it would be such a huge change. So any piece, and also people's capacity shifts over time, right? So if it's like, this summer I want to do some work on this, and then, maybe you want to cool off, maybe like, doing a lot around, like, I get very busy during budget season. So like, maybe you're like, budget stuff, that's just a little too much. It's too chaotic. It's a little too fast paced, but like, let me know what you're doing over the summer when things have slowed down. Awesome. Awesome. So thanks. That was a great question, Dina. Yeah. What you got, Jean?
Excuse me. I've worked with groups that really have to do a lot of work with Social Security, disability, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And they've gotten a lot of help from FLIC in the past. Are you the person that does that? Or is there someone else still available for that support?
Yeah, I do a tiny bit of that. It's not my main area of expertise. We do have a benefits advisor. Their name is Rashka Bradley. They are currently only at like 1 day a week.
Mhm.
So we do the best we can. We all have some knowledge of it. I have helped people I actually just had my the first like main application I was helping someone with and did, and we got it on the first try. So, so I'm not terrible, it seems.
Congratulations.
But it's definitely not my like bread and butter that I'm like super
Okay.
well versed in. But yeah, my office in general does. And then we can also refer folks out. Like, I know the Access to Independence in Portland, which is kind of our sister independent living center over there. They have a gentleman named Michael, and I know he does a lot of that too for folks. But yeah, and like, first, like, we can definitely help out. That was a long way of saying we do have a dedicated person, but their time is limited. We all know a little bit, and we'll all work to figure it out. If there's something going on someone needs help with, we'll sort it out.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. Anything else or ideas or?
Can I ask how you got involved with this work?
Yeah, definitely. No, it's I've had a circuitous route. So I've been working in human services in Tompkins County for a little over 10 years. So I had started out, I've always kind of been at advocacy organizations in some capacity. So that had started out at the Mental Health Association of Tompkins County, where I was mainly working with kids with mental health disabilities and developmental disabilities. Then I moved into residential for a bit. But then I really like developed and like was using my advocacy skills in a really robust way when I worked at the Advocacy Center. So I was working with survivors of intimate partner violence, and everything from like the very micro level advocacy of I'm working with this one survivor in front of me, but I also served on an investigation team. I was part of a lot of like countywide initiatives for specifically like when our county received funding to work against commercial sexual exploitation of children, I was like the main point person for that, because I just kind of fell into that as a niche randomly. And then yeah, it's kind of random and circuitous. That lended itself kind of to housing somehow, because I was doing a lot with our domestic violence shelter, and then got into housing advocacy. And then honestly, how I got into FLIC was I knew someone from FLIC was on the board for the organization I was at, and he recruited me, honestly. But personally, like I had a lot of trouble identifying as having a disability, because I'm very, I have an invisible disability. You wouldn't know by looking at me. I'm also very high functioning. I'm a little type A. So I've always had a hard time acknowledging that and feeling like that was like that I'm not lying or like making light of other people's struggles. That changed for me though, and I needed to go on a mental health leave from my job because I was not able to do my job effectively. And I think that was where I was like, oh, no, like I have a disability too. Like I have to also take this seriously for myself. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got to it. That was a little long-winded. I apologize.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else, or has anyone done any kind of advocacy work? I would love to hear about it. I know at one point someone had asked me about like the Stop Ageism movement. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. I would love to hear more about that if that's any, okay. That's cool too. You've all been wonderful audience members. Thank you.
I've done some advocacy
yeah.
work in North Carolina. My daughter
cool.
has a disability and was very active in the legislative part of doing some work, I guess is what I can say. And I'm certainly interested in finding out more about how I could help here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you and your daughter for your work. That's awesome. Yeah, so one of the main things to kind of get started, I can go back to my email and I can put it in the chat right now. I would love to add anyone that's interested to my mailing list that I have for volunteers.
Mm-hmm. That'd be great.
That is how I send out my action alerts. You could also, it's not the whole focus of it, but our newsletter, I will often include what I've been working on. So like I did a little write-up for going to Albany, or like what the new budget priority, how the budget ended up shaking up, things like that. And then oh, go ahead.
I'm interested in the part where you help people find people to help you.
Yeah.
I'm about to be 89 in a month or two, and things have been happening in the last couple of years, and I'm not there yet, but the time may be coming when I will need someone to come on a regular basis to do things for me. And I've heard that if you get someone from an agency, they don't pay them enough, and maybe you know somebody who's very good. But I'm in a position where I could pay more to get somebody who's better. And if you have access to those kinds of people, I'm interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Answer
that's
your
okay.
question. And
Okay.
then
So I would recommend the registry then. So the registry is private pay, and it is a very wide range. So there are folks on the registry, and you could call my office and ask for Teresa.
It's called the registry.
Yeah, the registry. And I will put Teresa
at FLIC. Teresa
Sivers.
How do you spell that?
It is Sivers.
Teresa Sivers helps people find people to help you.
Yep, she will go through and she will ask you, that's our general office number I just put in the chat. She will ask you about what you're looking for, what your budget is, where you live, when you're looking for help. She'll go through her registry list, pull a few names of people that she think could be good fits and pass those along to you. You would ultimately be hiring and firing, which is a nice thing as opposed to an agency, because agencies just kind of send someone, which can be good because you know someone will be sent, but it's it's a little out of your hands. The other nice thing about the registry is it's a huge range. So we have folks that were nurses for 20, years and years and have extensive experience. So you might have to pay more for them, but it's going to be probably pretty quality care. But we also have folks on there that are really just companions, like just some basic companionship. So there's a lot of options. That's one of the benefits if you are able to do private pay, is it can just be really flexible to what you need. But I think Teresa would be the best fit for you with that. I could not agree more about care aides not being paid enough. That is one of the, I have my other sign somewhere on here. I've got big protest signs around my office.
Is
But
there
not the
any-
one I was hoping
So
for.
is the registry something you sign up with, or?
So the registry is our listing of different care aides.
Oh,
That Teresa has done some basic, basically like we can verify that like this person is who they say they are.
uh-huh.
Like John Smith is in fact John Smith. But beyond that, we always encourage folks to interview their own people as well, because you are the one hiring them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we do that through, it's a collaboration with Office for the Aging.
Is there any work legislatively or any other way to get workers for these agencies to get better pay?
Not that I know of. That's most of my advocacy work, honestly, is around home care. So between changing those eligibility things, and then I'm very active with the Fair Pay for Home Care Act. There's a bunch of great bills around that. So that's probably one of the biggest. The picture I had in my in the closing where we had like the CDPA, that consumer directed personal care, that is all like the pay for that is like $16.20 an hour, and that's dictated by the state. No one can do like, that's what the
Right.
state says we can pay. And
Yeah.
it's awful because New York State is the worst in the whole country. Like we have the worst home care crisis with our projected numbers for how much home care we're going to need.
Right.
We are one of the worst off states. And
Yeah.
they are, some of the things that had been in the budget was trying to pull back some of the raises that they had agreed to giving care workers. They then were trying to be like, oh, wait, never mind.
Yeah.
So
I've
that's,
been
that's a
doing
lot of
things
my
like,
work.
I moved back here from North Carolina recently,
Mhm.
and there, whenever we went through agencies for my daughter, the agency, as an example, might get paid $28 an hour, and the worker gets $7.50.
Yep. I've got a bill for you then. So it's my favorite bill. So far, I always have a favorite bill. But we are trying to get rid of managed care. This is just a Medicaid thing. But essentially the state was like, hi, we don't want to sort out, and this is like my layman's terms, right? And and other people can have different synopses of these bills.
I
So
had
I'm
that
just
for a couple of years
acknowledging,
with them.
yeah, I'm just acknowledging my bias. So basically the state was like, we don't really know how to solve this. Here, companies, will you solve this for
Yeah.
us instead? And so they're like, yeah, of course we will. We're gonna keep most of the money. But if you look at how that money funnels through, my policy professor drilled it into my head, follow the money. But if you follow that, a lot of that money gets to the managed care, and by that I mean like Fidelis, Molina, and it stops there. It doesn't get to the workers, it doesn't get to the carers, and then there's very little accountability for following up because they've already been paid. They don't care.
I
They've
had
been
that
paid.
managed care for a couple of years
Yeah.
while I was still working at Ithaca College, and I hated it.
I believe that.
But
Yeah.
I've been very happy with traditional Medicare.
Good.
And sincerely hope it never goes away, because I
Mhm.
haven't had to do it. I've been retired 25 years, and I haven't had to do a stitch of paperwork I haven't had any copays, and everything I've needed has been covered,
That's amazing.
except a $30 or $40 eye exam once a year. But other stuff going on with my eyes, which requires more, all that's been covered.
But that's great. Yeah, Medicare is federal, so I do a little bit less with that, but I absolutely, writing letters, there's a lot we were doing on equipment, like wheelchair repair with Medicare. That can be something that can be really tricky and take a
Yeah.
long time. So yeah, Medicaid,
also
even though
have
I'm the state, but
I also have a long-term care policy that includes the same amount for home as it would for nursing, but it can be pretty tricky to put into effect. And I think probably you have to be so disabled to use it that you might not want to live.
Yeah.
Can't be. I think you have to be unable to do 3 of the 5 most basic things, like dress yourself and bathe yourself and all.
Yep. And that's really, I think of that, and what we often talk about is how that relates to the Olmstead decision, which says that folks have the rights to live in the most integrated setting possible. We can't force people into institutions, right? They have to live, they have the right to be able to live as independently as possible. But if we take away all the home care, that's going to make it so a lot of people can't, they could if they could get this home care that they very reasonably would like.
I want to stay in my own home until they carry me out.
Most people, and some people don't, and that I'm all for. I want everyone to make their own choices. But yeah, if you want to stay in your home, you should be able to. And they shouldn't be able to bully you into going somewhere else because it's a little cheaper for them, or lining the pockets of their friend who's lining their pockets back. But that's my again, I'm a little biased. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious, Andrea, about your funding. Is it a state position? Does it come through FLIC? Is it funded locally? I'm just want to know.
Yeah, so independent living centers are funded, strangely enough, through the education budget, which is why we don't get some of those human services things. So it's through the education budget because it used to be called VESID, but Access VR, it's basically the state's process for vocational rehab services. So like Challenge used to do a lot with it. I think they still do. So that's how, and that's kind of how they do it. It's not the most straightforward thing. But that's where the money comes. So I just wrote up my RFP. So that would be like, that goes to the New York State Department of Education.
Thank you.